Today on Carpool Coach, we'll be meeting with Duncan Storey, Managing Director of AQ2. AQ2 is a hydrogeological consulting service based in Western Australia, and Duncan and I have known each other for about 15 years when I first started coaching Duncan's former business, AQ2, back in 2005. Duncan will tell you all about that because it's his turn to get in front of the Carpool Coach.
Morning, Rob.
Duncan,
how are you doing, mate?
Good to see you, mate.
And you?
So tell me a bit about AQ2 and what AQ2 actually does.
So AQ2 is a professional services business, and in summary we help mining industries manage water within their business.
Okay.
So just to put a little bit more detail on that, if you dig a big hole in the ground, more often than not it will fill it with water.
Yep.
Rainfall or groundwater, so we would determine how much water it's going to fill up with and how you would best manage it.
Right.
When you're processing rocks to turn them into a mineral of some sort, you consume a lot of water.
Yep.
And if the volume of water that's coming out your big hole in the ground isn't enough, or the quality's not right, then you need to go and find a water supply. We would help companies find that water supply and design the associated engineering. And then finally, when you're moving all of that water around, be it out of your hole in the ground or out of your water supply area, you will change the environment, changes in water levels and so forth, and we help companies assess what those changes would be, and where those changes are undesirable, how they can best be managed.
Yeah.
That's us in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, beautifully done. So we first met in about 2005, and back then you were running AQ2, which in many respects is the predecessor to AQ2, right?
AQ2
so
could be said to actually be AQ2 Mark II.
It could be. I wouldn't say that, but
neither would I. But it's very coincidental.
Some have said that it's possible. So, what was the situation back then, and then what happened, and how did we arrive at where we are today?
So back in those days, myself and two or three other people formed a business that was effectively doing the same as AQ2, and we were reasonably good at what we do, and so the business grew. And as far as managers of a growing business go, we make very good hydrogeologists.
Yes.
And so back in 2005, when we first met, Rob, I think at that stage we'd been going about 6 years, and we'd grown from 6 or 7 people to about 30 people, and we were groaning at the seams.
Yeah.
In terms of systems and structure and so forth, and I realised that I was the MD, and I realised we needed some help for us to manage that growth and define our structure, and for me to understand what an MD should do rather than a hydrogeologist. And so we, you and I caught up.
Yeah. And then 5 years later, the business had grown from sort of 30 people to about 100, 110 people. From memory serves me correctly, right? And we had three offices.
They were.
Is that right?
No. I mean that was during the height of the mining boom.
Yeah.
So they were fantastic times, very exciting times.
Yeah.
We ended up at about 120 people.
120, right?
And we ended up with offices in Dublin, in Ireland, in London, in Adelaide, in Sydney, in Perth.
Yeah. Okay, I lost count.
And in Mongolia.
Right.
And we also had project offices in the Middle East.
Right.
So we were quite extensive.
You were, that's right. My goodness,
by the peak of the mining boom.
Absolutely. Right. So then what happened? We're now circa 2009,
yeah,
2010.
So one of the things that I've found works really well, particularly in professional services, is an employee ownership model that really encourages people to be part of the business.
Yeah. And
so we had a large, not all employees were owners, but we had a large quotient of shareholders from the employee base.
Yeah.
And some of those shareholders were a little bit older than me, despite my greying hair at the moment. This is 10 years ago, and I was still young.
Yeah.
And they were, moving towards retirement, and we were looking at some sort of business succession.
Yeah.
And we were victims of our own success in some respects. We'd built a business that was quite valuable, and the prospect of buying a large portion of the returning capital to a large portion of the shareholding was really quite challenging. And so we ended up looking at selling the business, and so we ended up selling the business as a going concern with all of the employees and so forth into a large multinational.
Right. And so that sale happened. That was, what year was that? 2010?
That was 2010.
2010. And then what happened?
we spent a long time. We had
Because you were working in that corporate now, you were part of that corporate.
We were working in that corporate, and we had numerous corporates that were interested in buying us, and so we spent a long term trying to match our business with what we thought would be the best corporate culture, so that we could all, so that anybody that wasn't retiring could make a long-term career in that new corporate.
Yes.
We didn't want to sell and have people leaving or feel that they had to leave because things had changed.
No.
And so we went through that long matching process and chose one particular corporate and sold to them, but in reality things were different.
Yeah.
And so I took an expanded management role in the corporate, and I sat on the Asia Pacific Board of Directors in that corporate for about 3 years. But then the extent of changes, and when you run your own business, you have quite an entrepreneurial spirit, and it's not always the case that with corporate controls and looking after shareholders and boards of directors elsewhere in the world, it's not always the case that entrepreneurial spirit can flourish.
Yes.
And so I ended up leaving the corporate after about 4 years. So in 2013, actually, I left the corporate.
Right.
And I started, and I decided initially I would just be an expert independent consultant, and I worked for about a year as an expert independent consultant. But then all of a sudden I became a victim of my own success again and needed to bring people on board, and hence AQ2 started.
Right, so AQ2 became Aquaterra Mark II.
It did indeed. Some would say that.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the story.